What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today's video, we're going to be reviewing Wandavision Season 1. Now, this is the first MCU show to kick off this new trend of shows in the MCU. So was it any good? Is it worth your time watching? Does it fracture the MCU fan base a little bit? We're going to be addressing those concerns and also delving into whether this show is actually worth your time watching. What does it add to the MCU and all that sort of stuff. If you like the video, please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, but let's get into it. So this show takes place around Wanda and basically sets her up after the events of Endgame and Infinity War. You see Wanda is in a position where she's grieving at the loss of Vision, and at this point in her life, she has lost her parents, she has lost her brother, Pietro, and now she's also lost the last thing that she had in this world, Vision. This essentially drives the narrative and essentially forms a crux as to why everything in this show is happening. She's in a position where she's lost everything, she has nothing to lose, and she just wants a place where she can isolate herself and be happy. In doing so, she drives out to Westview, and we later find out that Westview was going to be the place where Wanda and Vision buy a house together and start a family, essentially. Because of the events that took place in Endgame, obviously this didn't happen, so Wanda is very distressed and resorts to creating an alternate or fake reality in this same Westview area. However, in doing so, she encapsulates the population of Westview that were there before her and turns them into her puppets. These people are basically being held against their will in this new fake reality, and they play out whatever Wanda wants them to play out. Now, when first watching this, you kind of ask yourself, why sitcoms? Why are the first couple of episodes set in, the I Love Lucy time era and the Bewitched time era? Why is that relevant? We later find out through, I think, episode 7 or 8 or whatever it was, that Wanda heavily relies on sitcoms to sort of be her emotional support. They were there for her and they were a happy memory of her growing up, and they also serve their purpose through her traumatic experiences growing up in her life. So sitcoms always played a very prevalent role in Wanda's life, either through happiness or through some kind of support / escapism. Now, this show did release weekly, apart from the first 2 episodes to the general audience. Reviewers and critics had the first 3 released to them. However, I do think that this was acting as some kind of disservice to the fans by doing this. I understand the business decision behind having weekly episodes that allow speculation, that allows discussion, and it allows the topic of Wandavision to stretch out over 7 to 8 weeks. I understand that as a business decision. However, I do think that general audiences should have received the first 3 episodes like critics, because the first 2 episodes, in most people's opinion, were very slow. They were fun in and of itself, the whole old school Bewitched sort of slapstick comedy sort of thing. However, after that, after the first 2 episodes, there wasn't really much there in terms of story. There wasn't there gripping anyone to come back. I understand having that kind of setup. However, there was no narrative thread that ran between those episodes really to hook a lot of people in. So a lot of people, they watched the first 2 episodes and they said, look, this show's not for me, because they thought the entire show was going to be that. If they release the 3rd episode, you actually see a lot more where the entire reality starts to break down and things start going wrong, and that's where the hook is in episode 3. So if you made it to episode 3, chances are you kept watching. If you only watched the first 2 episodes and you didn't like it, you would have stopped. There are a few things I didn't like about the show. However, there are things that I think the show did in a really intelligent way that helps solidify and tie this back into the MCU. So the things that I did like about the show. The characters, actors were all brilliant. They all played their part. You could all tell they were having fun in their roles, especially jumping through the different time periods. The sets were fantastic, and you could always pick apart where the inspiration came from when the sets were being built. So you have I Love Lucy, you have Bewitched, you have Malcolm in the Middle, you have the Brady Bunch, the list just goes on. Now, a show or a movie is only as good and as entertaining as its villain. If the hero has a shit villain, it's going to be a crap movie or show. Thankfully, in this show, the villain was pretty good. Agatha Harkness, she's another witch in the MCU. However, her big reveal, like, everyone could see that coming. That was not a surprise. Even if you were just a casual watcher, you could tell that Agnes, wasn't who she says she was. Now, while these sitcom episodes are happening, S.W.O.R.D., formerly known as S.H.I.E.L.D., are watching this through the outside of the base. So it's good to have that dichotomy of going into a fake reality and coming back out to where the MCU kind of actually happened. I really like that. It sort of grounds it in the MCU. And you also see some of the impacts that Endgame actually had. We're introduced to a new character. We have seen her before in Captain Marvel, but this is her sort of grown-up version, Monica Rambeau. Captain Marvel worked with her mum, Maria Rambeau, and we did see child Monica. However, in this show, Monica actually gets powers through going through the Hex, which is the barrier around this fake reality. When we're introduced to her, we see her reappear in the hospital, and you see the stress and the confusion of being brought back 5 years after the snap. You see how desperate people are to catch up on the 5 years, and sadly, in Monica's case, her mum died a few years before she got snapped back. So it was a very emotional start to her character, one that hooked a lot of people in. One big thing I also liked as well was that this show had movie level budgets. So toward the later half of the season, there's actually a new version of Vision that comes out, which is recreated by Sword, and they have this big sort of battle between them both, and had the lasers firing from their head. You had Wanda and Agnes doing all these battles and stuff, and it was just crazy to see that there were movie level effects in TV shows now. So that was a big plus and a big vote of confidence to show that Disney actually believes in this property, and they're actually giving real money to make it as good as possible for the fans. Now, there were a few things that I didn't like about this show. Namely, was the first 2 episodes. For me, personally, I just think that could have been done in 1 episode. Get it out of the way. We understand. I didn't like how short they were either. And especially how short they were versus how long we have to wait to watch the next one. Some of the first few episodes were only about 15 to 20 minutes long. And the credits are super, super long as well. So you wait a week to watch 15 minutes, and then only in the last 3 minutes of the show is a kind of a little cliffhanger to try to get you over the line to the next one. So I do think they could have improved on the actual narrative from the start of the season. As I said before, they lost a big chunk of their audience just by people thinking that the whole show was going to be about, a slapstick sitcom parody, where it's really not. I feel like if they worked that in a little bit more at the start, they could have grabbed a few more people. Some people liked it, as I said before, but for me personally, I just think they could have done a bit better with that. Another thing that they did, which I think they had a huge missed opportunity, was with Evan Peters' character. He's brought back in as a version of Quicksilver. Yes, he is being manipulated by Agatha. However, with the fans knowing Evan Peters played a version of Quicksilver in the X-Men franchise, in the Fox franchise, this actually held huge implications for fans. Wanda being able to create new realities and possibly pull people from other realities, fans were speculating that, she pulled a version of Quicksilver from the Fox franchise over into the MCU timeline. Now, I'm not faulting this show because of fans' predictions and theories. That wouldn't be fair on the show. However, what they did with this character was a complete waste. Agatha would always talk about her husband or a partner, Ralph. We always thought, where is Ralph? Where is he going to turn up and all this stuff? It turns out that this version of Quicksilver, played by Evan Peters, just so happened to be Ralph. It was such a throwaway line to say, oh yeah, by the way, that's Ralph. And the way they did it was by showing a photo of Evan Peters with his name Ralph underneath it. I think if you're going to go to the trouble of getting Evan Peters in to play a version of Quicksilver, it makes sense to not just throw that whole thing away to be like, oh yeah, he's Ralph, and never address anything outside of that. So that I really didn't like. I think there was a huge waste of potential and opportunity there. Even if you don't want Aaron Taylor-Johnson back as Quicksilver, or just to get him back at all, this show handled this Quicksilver so poorly. There were so many loopholes that came in with this character being introduced, and I think it would have just been better to get Aaron Taylor-Johnson back. I think that would be a lot more cohesive in a storytelling perspective, rather than being like, oh hey, here's another Quicksilver from the Fox universe who isn't really from the Fox universe, but ends up being Ralph. And then that's it. This show is littered with Easter eggs as well, and the show actually has these weird little advertisements which tie back to Wanda's upbringing. So in some ads you see a toaster which blinks red, and it's the same blink that happened when Tony Stark's missile landed in front of Wanda and Pietro but never went off. That's the same beeping and the same red. Things like that again, really solidify this show's place in the MCU, and it provides a lot more origin to Pietro and Wanda than what Age of Ultron did. So was this show good? Yes, it was good. It does hold some impact to the MCU going forward. So Wanda is actually refining her skills through the Darkhold, which is just basically a magical book. And she's going to use that to amplify her chaos magic. And she is now stronger than Doctor Strange. So that's going to have big implications moving forward, especially going into Multiverse of Madness and Spider-Man 3. Now, just as my predictions for these kind of shows, Marvel cannot change too many things in these shows that impact the main movie thread of the timeline. The reason being is because you have casual moviegoers or casual movie fans. They might not be too invested in the shows or individual characters, however they might like the movies going forward. If you make drastic changes in these shows, you start fracturing and isolating parts of your audience away. So when the casual moviegoers go to watch the movie, they have no idea what the hell's going on. Not everyone has access to Disney Plus, not everyone can watch the shows. So, as I predicted and as I thought they would do, they set up all this stuff, and by the end of the show, not really much has changed. That director, Tyler Haywood, is arrested and he's gone. So I don't think they're going to be introducing him at all in the movies. You have Monica Rambeau, who is slightly tied to Captain Marvel, and she's going to be appearing in Captain Marvel 2. And I'm sure they're going to give a little bit of a summary or a recap as to her origins in Captain Marvel 2 for the moviegoers who didn't see Wandavision. Vision did die, but now he's back and he is this colorless white version. That's easily explained with a throwaway line in a movie. Someone could say, well, why is Vision white now? And they could just explain it a little bit to catch people up. A lot of things happened in this show, but also not much really happened at the end of it. It's all this build up and then everything was put back to the way it was. So people can be entertained in the show, but moviegoers aren't missing out on too much. Which I think is a double-edged sword. On one hand, you have a great story and people can still keep up. However, when you're watching the show, you kind of realize not much is going to change. Things that are happening in the show won't hold that much of an impact. So basically, at the end of the show, Wanda becomes the Scarlet Witch. That's a big event in itself, but we always see throughout every single movie her powers are growing. So it's not that much of a stretch of imagination. Apart from that, and a new Vision, nothing else really changed. After the whole season, nothing else really changed or had an impact on the entire MCU timeline. So, good or bad, it might have been anticlimactic. You know, it's good and bad. But if you are an MCU fan, I definitely recommend that you watch this show, you give it a chance, and now that it's out in its entirety, you can just binge it. You'll get through it in a couple of hours, and I think that's going to be the better way to watch this show. But if you do like the video, please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts on Wandavision down in the comment section below. But take care, stay safe, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, bye!